Hello to all students in Black Religion in America. What I'm about to do is give you a brief PowerPoint presentation. Well, at least I hope it's a brief PowerPoint presentation on the last three chapters of Penn's text, chapters 3, 4, and 5, where he relates how the standard mappings, that is, the working from a monotheistic viewpoint of African American religion, whereby he criticizes the notion that only Christianity and Islam can explain the African American religious experience or the African American religious context. Um, so let us go forward and let's get this done. What we need to understand is that there are certain kinds of slippages and uncertainties in trying to get an historical sense of African American religion, um, primarily through our culture. We need to understand that because of the enslavement of Africans, there is a certain lapse in what we can know about ourselves. That is, our cultural memory and our cultural artifacts are not readily and certainly available to us. And as a result, we may create certain things. But what Penn is saying is that if we're going to try to truly understand what it means to be religious or to having a religious experience, we must accept the fact that there are some things that are just not available to us. So he says that there are some tools that can be used that will help us to deal with our our religion itself. And it's a challenge because one thing is that because we have these lapses, we must go and dig back into history. So the first thing is the idea of using archaeology as one of those tools. Um, Now, and he says, archaeology is not just the science of archaeology, but archaeology is serves as a metaphor of us digging back into not just those concrete artifacts, but also digging into the best way we can who we are as a people, to discover and discern who we are as a people. And a part of that is going back into uh, the embodiment of black people, especially the embodiment of black people in church. What does it mean to have these black bodies, to have these thoughts about black bodies, and to have these black bodies engage in a certain kind of religious experience, especially in the church? And he ends with the notion of what it all boils down to when we're talking about the African American religious experience is there's a certain impulse that we have for a quest for complex subjectivity. And this quest, which he explains later on in chapter 4, is really the desire to know oneself, to know oneself in a very existential, intimate kind of way. That is, ask the question, who am I as a person who is a subject who can think, who can feel, who can do as a subject as opposed to being treated as an object, as just a black body, to be treated just as a chattel. So this quest for complex subjectivity means that all of us undergo a certain kind of desire to know oneself in all of our complexity and all of our complication. So Penn is saying that that's what this quest is all about. And in chapter 4, he talks about this quest for complex subjectivity in the notion of conversion. Now he spends a lot of time talking about conversion from the experience of Christianity. But let's be clear, that's just an example of a quest for complex subjectivity. There are other ways of dealing with this quest, not just through this coming to grips with who I am in the face of a Christian God. There are other aspects of complex subjectivity, um, because the history of conversion is very short and very limited. Um, one of the assumptions of Black Christianity is that everyone must undergo a conversion experience, whereby one knows, quote unquote, that they have been saved by God. But again, that's a very short kind of history, and that's a very limited understanding of what it means to engage in this quest for complex subjectivity. Okay, so Penn is just using that as an example. There are other ways of doing that. One way, of course, is looking at, as Penn does, is to look at arts and ethics. That is, especially for those of you who are artistic, whether we're talking about visual arts, or whether we're talking about music, or whether we're talking about other kinds of artful activity. To engage in that activity is a certain kind of quest to understand not just yourself, but to understand the larger world and the world that you live in. And also with regards to our ethics. Um, and ethics in this sense is doing the right thing. Now, Christianity will say that there is only one way to do the right thing, and that's the Christian way. Islam will say there's only one way to do the right thing, and that's the Islamic way. But ethics, if we're looking at doing the right thing, all of us, in terms of this quest for complex subjectivity, are engaged in an ethical kind of construct. How do I go about doing what I need to do in order to um, be myself in the world, in order to accept others as themselves in the world, without me trying to impose my thoughts, my will upon them. So in chapter 5, Penn talks about a new theory of religion that goes beyond Christianity and Islam. So the very first question he asks is, no, what is a religious experience? Um, Presumably, we can say that any kind of experience can be a religious experience, depending upon how you define religion. Going to a football game can be a religious experience. Going to a concert can be a religious experience. Um, uh, Going to a movie can be a religious experience. Having sex can be a religious experience. But Penn is saying that all experiences are not religious experiences. So he does not want to um, get on that slippery slope of saying that I can pull out any experience that I feel and call it religion. What Penn is saying, in terms of defining religion as religion, is this recognition of and response to this elemental feeling for complex subjectivity. And along with that, the transformation of consciousness, and boy, did I misspell consciousness, but the transformation of consciousness that allows for the historically manifest battle against the terror of fixed identity. Now, there's a lot there. So let's unpack that. What he is saying in religion is this elemental, this essential, this 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 thing, this feeling that all of us have to better understand who we are as human subjects, to better understand who other folks are as human subjects. And with this quest, this feeling, there is something that goes along with that. That is a transformation in the way that we think, a transformation in the way that we do, a transformation in our being that allows for us to come to grips with this notion that we only have one way of being. Now, obviously, in the context of African American slavery, one of the key elements of that was the understanding that black folk were less than human. That is, we had this fixed identity imposed upon us, and to a certain extent, this fixed identity was accepted by us. So if we are engaging in this quest for complex subjectivity, we are trying to do battle with that. But not only us, but that's historically. If we look at the history of black folk in America, wherever America is, there's always been this battle to go against a definition that's been imposed upon us from the outside. So this is what Penn calls a religious experience. So it goes beyond just a football game. It goes beyond just a concert. It goes beyond just a movie. It goes beyond just any other experience that we might have in our lives. So this is what Penn is talking about. This is how he talks about the religious experience. And along with that, he has these 5 assumptions regarding, he calls it the study of African American religion, but I would also say regarding African American religion itself. That is, if we're going to look at African American religion, we're going to have to engage in it in a way that goes beyond just Christianity and Islam. And these are just my paraphrases of, but you can look at it in chapter 5 to see exactly what he's saying and how he unpacks it. But one thing he says that all of us, we construct the world that we live in. We construct ourselves, we construct others, we construct the world. And all of these sources can serve as material to help us to lead to an understanding of a deeper something, that quest that's there. No matter what it may be, can help us to deeper understand this something. And this something, this inner compulsion, this inner essential feeling, this essential element compels an understanding of ourselves that's not limited in very general, elementary kind of ways. There's something about us that's more complex than mere um, uh, essentializing tools. And this feeling is the identifying character of all African American religion. So whatever the religious experience is, there's this something that compels us to go beyond what somebody else may say about us. These imposed definitions. And fourth, um, the relational aspects of it. That is, we all relate to each other. For instance, I relate to you as professor. You relate to me via this online course as students. But even in this once removed kind of relational activity, I must accept who you all are as human beings. You must accept who I am as a human being. We may not all agree on everything that's said or done, but in terms of dealing with the African American religious experience, it helps all of us if we lay aside our assumptions of the standard mappings. It helps all of us to better understand what it means to be human. To be human does not simply mean you are a Christian. To be human does not simply mean that you are a Muslim. To be human does not simply mean that you are something else. What Penn is saying is that all of this opens up African Americans to what it means to be religion. And it's this quest. It's this quest to come to grips with who we are that helps us to fight the terror of fixed identity. And no one can impose that upon anybody else and say, this is the right way to do it. Especially, how Christians and Muslims sometimes do it. And finally, uh, we have to be realistic, and recognize that religion, and I have religion in quotes here, um, as an elemental impulse, um, it simply cannot be understood by the standard mappings of Christianity and Islam. It simply cannot. And I say this knowing that, based upon your introductory uh, discussion board posts, I say this knowing that a lot of you are Christian. A lot of you are raised in the church. A lot of you are deeply rooted in your Christianity. Um, but Christianity is not all there is to it. Um, so Penn is saying in terms of studying it and studying African American religion, and in terms of understanding African American religion, we must get beyond the standard mappings.